Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Welcome back to my book reading. And today we continue with our reading of the book Thinkers of the East. More specifically, we are going to be reading the chapter A Disciple of Haidar. As usual, I will get my reading assistant to do the reading, and I'll get back to you after the reading to give you some of my thoughts about what has been read.
A disciple of Haidar. Haidar heard a disciple say, "I am glad that I did not buy such and such a book, for now I have arrived at the source of its knowledge. I have saved myself pain and needless expense." After a year, Haidar handed him a book, saying, "You have served me for 12 months. The value of your labor has been 100 dirhams. That is the cost of this book. You would not have paid 100 silver pieces for such an inanimate object as a book, and few people would do so. But you have been made to pay for it by me. And here it is. A camel is dear at a penny if you do not need a camel. A single word is cheap at 1,000 gold pieces, if it is essential to you. If you wish to return to the source of being, you will always have to take the first step, even though you may be demanding to be allowed to take the 100th step."
Welcome back to a reading of the chapter A Disciple of Haidar. And you've heard the reading by my virtual assistant. So now I'll just give you a few of my thoughts about this very short chapter. Now this chapter has one disciple saying that he did not need to buy a certain book because after all he's already now arrived at Haidar, in the presence of Haidar, who is supposed to be a great teacher and the source of the knowledge of that book. So he says, "I have saved myself pain and needless expense," because he doesn't have to, buy the book. He thought it was, since he's with a teacher already, direct transmission of that knowledge from the teacher. And this is the attitude that many of us carry when we want to study from someone. We always think somehow that we have already attained a certain level of competence or understanding or knowledge, if you like, that we think that certain things are just beneath our dignity. Or the other side of it is that we tend to think that sometimes it is always better to go direct to the source of that knowledge, right? Even though we have not actually been certain about where our level is. We're not even sure where we are, but we are certain only that we want to be with this great teacher. Okay, we think that we are deserving of being in the presence of that teacher, when we have not done the actual preparation that should have been done in order to be in that teacher's learning circle. Now, this is actually a reflection of a certain kind of arrogance on our part if we do such things, because we think that we are able to sit in that circle direct, straight away, right? And this sometimes is due to our own thinking that somehow we belong to that elite group of students, if you like, with that great teacher. We want to be known that we are sitting with that teacher. Now, this is not a new theme. We've already heard about it previously in a previous chapter about how people want to skip, right, being in the presence of going through certain stages and so on. So this is the same thing. We find that this person wants to just skip the book because he feels that perhaps the book is beneath his dignity or whatever it is, right? Maybe he thinks this book is too simple for him. But that is not for us to decide. It is not for the student to decide whether a book is too simple or what step to take first, and so on in our learning. All right, and this goes back to what I said about a curriculum. I'm just in the previous chapter, I talked about that a curriculum is very much in the head of the teacher, not in what is written down. Like, well, you will be covering this and this and this and this and this. Like what we are used to today in a modern, perhaps secular system of learning. Then we are used to that. We see in on paper somewhere, all right, stating very clearly the course objectives and what are the topics covered and so on. So we know, okay, we go through this. But when you come to a traditional learning, especially learning to be a person, a good Muslim, it is not like that. All right, each one of us, the master would have an idea about how to actually make us progress in a proper stage. And usually these stages would depend on the student, it depends on his ability, his capacity, it depends on what he has already acquired, all right? And then, but the objectives at the end may be the same, but it all also depends on where each student begins from, right? And this is again going back to the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "What? Teach according to their level." So it is for the teacher to decide. It is not for the student to decide where he should begin. Okay, it is for the teacher to decide. So as a student, we must first of all submit to whatever that the teacher wants us to do. All right. And then, so actually, if you want to study something, don't be so arrogant to think that, okay, that you can immediately sit in the teacher's circle of learning. That's not how it's done. You may need to do some preparatory work first. And that preparatory work may actually include you having to read a text, something very mundane even. So Haidar, having heard what his student had said about not having to obtain the book, read the book, or to go through the book first, he then allowed the student to stay on with him. And at the end of 1 year, Haidar then gave him that same book which the student had rejected, all right, and told him that the cost of his labor, that means the student's labor, you can define labor as the what perhaps during that 1 year what the student did for Haidar in his interactions with Haidar, or it could be his labor at actually trying to learn from Haidar directly at its source. Okay, that means face to face, is the same as the cost of the book. And on top of that, the cost of the book was decided by Haidar to be 100 dirhams, which is pretty expensive. So, anticipating what the students say, he says, Haidar said that he knows that people will not buy such an inanimate object, right, at such a price. But you now have been made to pay for that thing, for that book, by me. So in other words, he's actually challenging the student. Now, what are you going to say now? You didn't want to buy the book. I'm making you buy the book at 100 dirhams. Haidar also said to him, a camel is dear at a penny if you do not need a camel. A single word is cheap at 1,000 gold pieces if it is essential to you. So here Haidar is trying to say to him that how much you are willing to spend for something is dependent on how much you need that thing. Not so much want also. Please note the difference between need and want. So in this case, Haidar is saying, actually, you need this book. All right, so I'm going to make it very expensive for you. Okay, remember at the start, the student said that he didn't want to buy the book at all. Now Haidar forced him to get the book. All right, this is the book that you need. All right, and I'm charging you at a very expensive price. So now the question is, do you want to accept it or not? Okay, and then Haidar proceeded on to say, if you wish to return to the source of being, you will always have to take the first step. So there you are. So if you want to learn something, you have to take the first step. You cannot skip certain steps, like some people want to do today. everything they want to do, in an express fashion, EXPRESS, express, right? They want it all speeded up, souped up, fast, okay? And they don't want to waste time because they think that all that matters is time. As people today always say, time is money. All right. But what they don't understand is that time is perhaps not the most important thing. The most important thing is how much you have understood, how much you have actually learned from what has been taught, how much it took you to actually what you call take to heart what your teacher has taught you. How much is it that you have actually tried to apply in your life? And those things take a long time. You can't speed those things up, right? So Haidar forced him to actually to rethink the way he actually approaches his study. Okay, not everything is to be done in a what speeded up form, accelerated learning today they call it. You can't do that. So you have to go through the stages, and you have not fulfilled this first stage, then no point talking about going any further. So what Haidar did to him was now go back to where you should be, which is start by reading the book. Okay, so this story is a lesson about being about knowing, all right, what you need and what you want. And most of the time, the student doesn't know what he needs. He thinks he knows, but actually the things that he thinks he needs is actually what he wants, right? And what he wants may not be appropriate for him. What he should do is to make sure that his basic needs are fulfilled first before talking about more advanced levels of study. So those are my thoughts about this short chapter of this book. And I hope again you found something here useful for you, something maybe hopefully enlightening, and hopefully you find the story also quite amusing, because if you find it quite amusing, all right, entertaining even, and yet you are able to learn something from it, you are more likely to learn from that story, inshallah. So if you like this, again, I hope to see you in the next chapter. And also, I hope you will subscribe to this channel, and you would be looking forward to my next sharing. I do hope so. All right, inshallah. So I'll see you again in the next reading.